Right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. So, another class for the Basketball Hall of Fame was announced last week, and still, Tom Chambers has yet to hear his name called for enshrinement. Now, when Chambers' NBA career ended back in 1997, he left the game as a four-time All-Star, as well as being named to the NBA's All-Second Team twice, as well as being an All-Star Game MVP back in 1987. Of course, that game will always be remembered as the last All-Star game for Dr. J. Now, Chambers finished his career by averaging just over 18 points and 6 rebounds per contest. Chambers is one of just 52 guys. And I say the 52, you think about all of the guys who have played in the NBA for nearly 80 years now. But he's just one of the 52 guys in the league who can say that they've scored at least 20,000 points. And of those players, aside from Chambers, only Anton Jameson is the only other player who is eligible for enshrinement in Springfield who has yet to have his name called. Okay. And I say that I take that back. No, it is there are a couple of other guys that are eligible that have scored 20,000 points, like a Joe Johnson and a LaMarcus Aldridge, excuse me, but the years they're still not eligible as of yet. But nonetheless, getting back to Tom Chambers, all right, he's currently 51st on the list, okay, all time scoring in NBA history. And to give you an idea of that, excuse me, at the time of his retirement, he was actually in the top 25. All right, naturally, we've seen so many guys in this era of basketball who have come on and passed him. But with all of that said, why hasn't Chambers been inducted to the Basketball Hall of Fame as of yet? We're talking about one of the fiercest scorers from the decade of the 1980s. You're talking about a guy in Tom Chambers who averaged more than 20 points per game in a season 4 times. You go back to 87, that was a year that he was the All Star Game MVP. He averaged more than 23 points a game that year as a member of the Seattle Supersonics. In 88, he averaged nearly 26 points. In 90, with the Suns, he averaged more than 27 points. Okay. We're talking about a guy in 87 when he helped. That was arguably one of, if not his best years in the NBA. Talked about the All Star Game MVP. He also helped the Sonics reach the Western Conference Finals that year, and in the postseason that year, he averaged more than 23 points per game. Now, overall, Chambers averaged more than 20 points per game in a playoff run 4 times during his NBA career. That also included him dropping more than 22 points per game in helping the Phoenix Suns get to the Western Conference Finals back in 1990. Tom Chambers put together a solid resume. You think about his time coming into the league with the San Diego Clippers, and then, of course, after 2 years there, he was traded to the Seattle Supersonics. And you think about some of those Sonics teams that he played on in the mid 80s with the likes of Xavier McDaniel. You also think about Dale Ellis. You think about playing for Cotton Fitzsimmons with the Phoenix Suns, and then making the transition later in his career. You think about when the Suns went out there back in 92, prior to the 92-93 season, they acquired Charles Barkley from the Philadelphia 76ers. Tom Chambers still came off the bench that year for the Suns and dropped in more than 12 points per game in helping them reach the NBA Finals. That was the only time in Tom Chambers' career that he was able to make the finals. But I asked the question, has Chambers been forgotten about as the years go by? And I'm going to say, honestly, absolutely. Thank goodness for social media platforms like YouTube right now because, you know, his fans and other people can upload, highlights and clips of what he did during the 1980s. And anybody who watched Tom Chambers play in the 1980s and watched him live knew that he was a problem. He was 6'10". He was a guy that he was quicker. He was too quick for power for like the power forwards, and then he was too big for the small forwards to deal with. And I mean, Tom Chambers was a guy that if you didn't pay attention, he could give you buckets. He was faster than he looked. He can get up and down the court, and of course, Tom Chambers could throw it down when he had to. For me, it's one of those where sometimes, unfortunately, when it comes to the Hall of Fame, regardless of the sport, there's a bit of a popularity contest. And I think, unfortunately, Tom Chambers falls into that category because he's a name that just doesn't come off of, a lot of people's tongues immediately. And you have to wonder, he spent his entire career on the West Coast. And in those days, there wasn't a lot of cable TV. There wasn't the internet. There wasn't social media. So, of course, a lot of people on the East Coast really weren't picking up a lot of Tom Chambers' games. And you think about it, his prime was spent in the Western Conference with the Clippers when they were in San Diego, of course, with the Sonics, and then with the Suns. And when you think about his NBA career, it's kind of a toss up whether you think about his days with the Sonics or whether you think about his days with the Phoenix Suns. And they kind of honestly even out. He averaged 20.4 points per game during his time with Seattle. He averaged 20.6 during his time with the Phoenix Suns. Played 393 games for Seattle, played in 380 games for Phoenix. But nonetheless, you got to wonder. Tom Chambers is 66 years old. And I'm not here to say that, you know what, he's an old man or a young man, this, that, and the third. But I'm one of those people. I like to give people their flowers when they could still appreciate them. And, it always bothers me when, we see people inducted into the Hall of Fame after they pass away and they're no longer here to embrace it and enjoy it. Tom Chambers deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And hopefully, he will be able to see it. That is the biggest thing for me. Honestly, I think it's a travesty that it has taken him this long. And I think it's a travesty that we're still not talking about Tom Chambers as a basketball Hall of Famer. He's not the only one. Don't get me wrong, but I definitely wanted to take this time out to highlight what I feel is a huge oversight by the Basketball Hall of Fame. And maybe just one day they'll get it right and put Tom Chambers in Springfield. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw in this podcast, you know what to do, folks. Hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out anytime at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you give me that follow, it will be my pleasure to do the same in return. And that also goes for Instagram, where you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Also, if you're on Facebook, you can check me out at the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks. My name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.